Listener advisory. This episode contains explicit discussions about ritual abuse, trafficking, and occult practices involving sex and mind control. Listener discretion is strongly advised. You've entered a space where the veil is thin, where secrets buried by fame and fortune come clawing to the surface. This is Strange Darkness Radio, After Dark. I am Benson, your spectral guide, and tonight we walk a razor's edge between the seen and the unspeakable. Some truths aren't just inconvenient, they're dangerous. Tonight's guest has lived through horrors most wouldn't dare imagine, yet she's chosen to speak. Olivia James is the author of the GreyMouse Series, a harrowing account of ritual abuse, government mind control, and sex-based occult practices hidden in the highest levels of society. From MK Ultra programming and monarch trauma bonding to sex magic rituals performed by the elite to conjure demonic power, Olivia was there, groomed as a sex conduit, silenced, controlled, and ultimately awakened. With us tonight are your host Bobby Washington and our guest co-host Jamie Tall as we explore the hidden mechanisms of spiritual bondage, the price of power, and how survivors like Olivia are reclaiming their stories, no matter the risk. This episode is not for the faint of heart. Listener discretion is no longer a courtesy. It's a warning. This is Strange Darkness Radio, After Dark. And now, we follow the mouse into the maze.
Welcome to this After Dark series on Strange Darkness Radio. I'm your host, Bobby Washington, along with my guest co-host, Jamie Tall. Jamie, how is it going?
Great. I'm super excited for this. Been prepping all week for this episode, so...
Well, definitely thank you for joining us, Jamie. And you yourself are a survivor of all kinds of traumatic instances. Can you tell our audience about your,
Absolutely.
Situation that occurred?
Yeah, so in a dark time in my life, got really addicted to drugs and messed around with some people that weren't great and ended up getting trafficked through a satanic cult. And they used a lot of different things, magic and brainwashing. And it was super traumatic. It was a very a confused period of my life because I didn't know what was real, what wasn't real. They told me things. They made me feel really ashamed. They used even scripture to brainwash me into thinking that I was something that I wasn't. And they were trying to keep me in their circle and keep me down. And I was miraculously delivered and got arrested or got rescued, one or the other. And went into sober living in 2015 and have been free from that ever since. So.
Okay, well, tonight, again, is going to be a very deep discussion on ritualistic practices and how people gain power from these rituals. So we're going to go ahead and play the intro for our guest, and here we go.
Tonight, on Strange Darkness Radio After Dark, we're joined by a truly fascinating guest, Olivia James. Olivia is the acclaimed author and creator of the GreyMouse book series, a collection of gripping novels that delve deep into the shadowy corridors of power, secrecy, and the occult. Olivia has become known for her fearless exploration of hidden societies, dark rituals, and the unsettling truths that often lurk just beneath the surface of our everyday world. With a unique blend of meticulous research and storytelling, Olivia's work pulls back the curtain on the rituals and secret practices of the elite, inviting readers to question what we think we know about power and its spiritual costs. Her GreyMouse series has captivated audiences with its chilling realism and thought-provoking themes, making her a sought-after voice on the intersection of human nature, the supernatural, and the unexplained. Tonight, Olivia takes us even deeper into these mysteries, guiding us through the real-life inspirations behind her books and sharing her insights into the hidden world of sex rituals, demonic entities, and the dark side of human ambition. Please join me in welcoming Olivia James to Strange Darkness Radio, After Dark.
Olivia, thanks for joining us on tonight's show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me again.
And again, Olivia's been on the show. It was an amazing episode that I actually had to turn into a two-part series. And I'm just, really happy to have you back, especially what is going on in this world today and all
Yes.
the events that are occurring as we talk and this episode plays out. And I am talking about the Sean Diddy situation only because I've had dealings with him. My son is in the music business, and I was his manager. And I actually went through, situations to where he actually was on a show of his, which was called P. Diddy Star Maker, and where they were in a mansion and all kind of other things. And so just it's funny how when someone is a certain way, I won't say, basically when you see evil or you meet someone and you get a feeling and you never, you don't really trust yourself whether or not that feeling is real. And then you find out all the things that go on behind closed doors and you're like, damn, okay, I was picking up what I was picking up. So I do find that interesting. But I want to get into your story and the whole MK Ultra and rituals, and you can give the people a little bit more background, of your story.
Yeah, well, first I just want to bless the podcast. I just got a message from my father who passed away a
Mm,
long time ago, and he just said that he said, I set you in this world. He said, now make it yours.
mm,
So that's my father's here to kind of bless what we're doing. So I kind of talked a lot before about how I got into the programs, in terms of, being my father and his ties to drug trafficking in the government. And a lot of that kind of, from what I've has experienced, I think a lot of people, there's a lot of different extensions of this. But from what I experienced, it was a lot of it was the government was behind it. And
mm,
and they are connected to not just, satanic ritual abuse, occult practices, ritualization. They also work hand in hand with elites. They have various programs that distinctly search for people that have these particular abilities. And if anybody wants to research, various things on the CIA website, they have a whole black vault where there's tons of declassified documentation where they do discuss some of these programs. It's just nobody's reading it. It's, there's a lot there to look over and, view in terms of how they connected and utilize people for these practices.
mm. Wow. That's so let them know a little bit about your story and how you know the government is involved and what actually occurred.
Yes, I can do a little bit of summary of my origin story. So, my father, he got recruited very young, into military intelligence, and he was a code breaker, and he spoke German on the German-Russian border in the 60s. He was prior part of the Army Security Agency, so it was an intelligence group. And when he came out of that, he had a little bit of a hard time finding his, place in the world and ended up getting involved in something that we call the cartels now, but back then they didn't have the word cartels. They were more of like a crime syndicate. But like I said, if anybody wants to research, the government's involvement into drug trafficking and that kind of thing, just the word trafficking, you can see where it's tied to. If they were assisting with drug trafficking, then yes, there may be some other things. But from what I know that he was doing a lot of major drug trafficking in the 60s and 70s, and he was doing it. He was a pilot too, so he did it by plane, boat, bus, car, and they were making tons of money. He ended up getting raided because he got addicted to his product, and he wasn't the same asset as they had trained. He came out of intelligence, so he should have been, they figured he should have been better than this, and
Hmm.
I still want to, delve deeper into his whole past to see how he got mixed up in it directly in terms of mind control and things like that. Because
Yeah.
I do feel like he had some of that. So when he got arrested, he was looking at life in prison, and he didn't. And in my opinion, and I feel like he was a coward because he was afraid to go to prison. He was afraid to lose his freedom and his life. And in his mind, he thought just sacrificing one of his children would, help save everyone and himself, and he could live a normal life if he did that. So he signed me over to the government in order for them to identify me and utilize me as an asset. And there's a lot of different ways that people get identified for programs. Some of the more recent ways that people have been exposing is kind of like the school when they're doing like this talented and gifted programs throughout schools. There's a lot of kids that are getting pulled into that, and they're doing a lot of testing, academic testing, and things like that, and telling them they're going to be, doing a lot of cool things, and they're not telling the parents. And I've just realized that that's how they're identifying some of these children, because the parents aren't notified that a lot of times that the student is in the gate program or the tag program or
Oh
whatever. It's
yeah.
just something that's happening. And by the time you figure it out, they had already been in the program for a year and had done all the testing and had been identified as somebody with, a higher intellectual ability or academics, that kind of thing. So there's
Hmm.
a lot of different ways that people get pulled into this. So for me, this was the way I got pulled into it, and it's a unique story because it was through drug trafficking, which not a lot of people have that, being involved in MK Ultra through drug trafficking. So when I was taken to around 7 years old is when they pulled me in to actually start the direct mind control programming, and that programming happened at a psychiatric hospital on the East Coast, and the programmer was a woman.
Oh
And
wow.
yeah, and sometimes and people have to remember that, when we're thinking about, some of these programs and trafficking and things, it's not all men. There's a lot of women involved in this. And the main programmer I had was a woman. She had men working with her, but she was a woman. So she was the one that was responsible for turning me into what I was based on her, processes. She identified different processes that she would think would work with me and this other boy that was there named Jacob. And they used a lot of what I describe as systematic torture and abuse. It included sexual, psychological, abuse, physical, a lot of physical abuse too, and a lot of psychological manipulation. And especially when you're a child, it's very difficult when you're trying to trust adults and they
Hmm.
they harm you. So and it's conflicting in your mind because they'll harm you, but then they'll be nice to you. And they'll harm you, then they'll be nice to you. And that's kind of what breaks the child down. And that's what broke us down, is that constant back and forth where, here, take, here's a gift, but then they hurt you. They do it over and over, over and over. And it was almost like it was happening like every 15 to 20 minutes, very systematic. And we took to that torture so well, we learned how to leave the body, and we learned how to be in extreme dissociative states. And once we were in those extreme dissociative states is when the programmer would take us into her office, and she would practice very deep hypnosis on us, very deep hypnosis on children. And usually not everybody knows this, but it does work on children too, because I remember, because I was there, and I know how good it worked on us.
Yeah. And what age were you at this time?
7.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so 7. And I want to say I want to say that the trauma and the abuse pushed us into the dissociative state, which assisted her in her hypnosis, because it's almost like a trance state where you're in a different shift of consciousness. You shift your consciousness in order to avoid pain, the body's pain. You shift that consciousness. So she helped us. She pushed us towards that. But and under hypnosis, that's when she found out things about me and this other child that, I mean, how could anybody know this was what she would find?
Hmm.
They were looking at past lives, and the government does track certain people based on past lives, based on DNA, based on genealogy. They're looking at people's intellectual ability, and they're trying to identify people that could really be good assets in terms of their agenda. It
Oh, so
doesn't,
that's why, not to interrupt you, but so that's why
yes.
they take all the baby's DNA now. And
Yeah.
even if you have your baby at home, they will later will try to get the baby's DNA. That's interesting.
And they pretty much get it, and they pretty much do get it. I mean, there's so many different ways to obtain it. Do you know how many women are donating placenta for
Yeah.
research? We donate it for research and we think we're doing something well because they come into your room after you've had your baby and say, we could be using this for stem cell research and things like that. They have all of that there. They track you by if you were ever in the military, they have all your blood, all your DNA, all your vitals, everything you can think of is
Yeah.
somehow tracked. We think we're so invisible if we keep to ourselves. It's not the truth. We're being tricked into thinking that, you know, that we're free, and they're trying to control so much of this to it, and it's their agenda is power, control, and conquest. That is the main reason they have tortured, kidnapped, tortured, and abused children, and to grow them into these assets for power, control, and conquest. And it's insane that they go that far just to have what they want to have and to keep what they want, keep their power and things like that. It's really crazy that they do that. But when I was under hypnosis with the I call her the programmer, but she was a really good hypnotist. She pushed me so far that I was pushed into like some of my old selves, in which some of my old reincarnated selves were what people would consider like a darker entity.
Yeah.
I had some very dark past lives, like as a serial killer and a dark entity, and I was a psychic medium in one past life. And I've learned that myself in my own belief system and my own experience, actually direct experience, is that I retained a lot of that. And I believe most of us retain something from a past life in your cellular level.
Hmm.
That's what I've seen under my own remote viewing. I tried to scan the body and see where some of these, it looked like it was carried in the spine. Some of it's carried in the spine. Like you looked at your past lives and it was carried in the spine a bit. And I also feel like some of these abilities that I have are partly come from the stomach too. It's crazy to say that it could be a biological mechanism, but for me, when I remote viewed it, that's what I saw.
Yeah.
So what she got excited about is that this was kind of like something that the government was starting to delve into. And we're not the only government that attempts this. Lots of different what we call secret agencies around the world attempt this. This is not just us. Pretty
Oh
much
yeah.
there's
I
so
can
many
imagine.
different other countries that have programs like this that, are doing the same thing to children and trying to find, they all want to stay on top. And if they want to stay on top, they all have to outmatch each other. And
Oh,
how
for sure.
can and they're all trying to make what they consider super soldiers
Yeah.
in different ways. And for us, they do consider us soldiers in a way because we can do, they've trained us to do things that not everybody can do,
Hmm.
so in that way you would be unique. So that's what she saw in me. She saw something dark from a dark past, and they wanted to utilize that. They wanted to see what they could do with that and how far they could take that. So she sent me to something that looked like a psychiatrist's office, but it was an older gentleman, very frail, and his name was Dr. Green. And I think I said this last time, but a lot of people say that Dr. Green is another name for Mangala.
Mm.
So, this could have a lot of ties to, Operation Paperclip, things like that.
Yeah.
I have not remote viewed that for the direct connection, but there
Mhm.
may be a particular correlation between the two. So she had me go to his office, and he was conducting some side project that he was wanting to start, you know, and it was called Project Traveler. and he had some people do an exam on me, and I believe they were some type of assets themselves that had been gone through the same thing as I had. And they saw something in me, and they said, we found the thing inside her. And when they found that thing, they decided to take me into that program. And they did a few different, experiments, because it was pretty new to them. Not that this kind of thing hasn't been going on for a while, but for
Oh, for
their
sure.
for their particular program and project, they were trying to do something where they were trying to find some of these darker things. There's another program out there called Project Ibis, and they're kind of looking for more of those like lighter angelic beings. And this
Mhm.
is kind of like a sister program called Traveler, where they wanted to find the darker beings, because unfortunately there is power behind the dark side. And that's what they want to tap into. That's what they want to hold on to. And that's what they want to utilize in order to maintain their power and to pursue more power, more financials, everything.
Yeah.
So,
And
okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead,
you,
Jenny.
I have so many notes. Um, so I also wanted to add that they also use homeless people, drug addicts, and sex workers because they are considered disposable to them. And like the fear and the psychological reactions that you were talking about, like with fear, like causing fear, in people, like I don't it's so crazy like what they like the things that they get out of it. And sometimes I feel like maybe they can even on the occult side of it even put in stuff when you're in those, if you're dissociating or whatnot, you know what I mean? It's easier for them to add, you know what I mean, like evil entities or whatever it is that they're doing, right? um and then you were talking about like the kind of like trauma bonding, and that made me think of like Stockholm syndrome of, where you think that they're like, oh well, these people care about me, like they're taking care of me. um and then I wanted to ask you about dreams because I know you talked about hypnosis, but for me, they would know what I was dreaming. And sometimes I wondered, were they making me have these dreams to replace memories, to give me a different timeline of what my memory was in my brain?
Were you connected to the government programs? Because the government has been utilizing technology that can impact your dreams for almost like 30 years. So it's something to look into.
Right.
They've
Yeah.
been able to affect your dreams for about 30 years, or maybe even longer. From what I remote viewed, they already have technology to do that. So it kind of almost makes me think that it was a government infiltration from whatever you went through. And just because, you have some of that addiction, that's actually the government also sometimes pushes people towards that, or infiltrates your life in order to push you towards that, to stop you from remembering anything that happened to you as a child. They utilize all these different techniques. It's called omega programming. They have that particular program to make you harm yourself in some way or have someone else harm you. When I, when they tried omega programming with me, they tried a lot of V2K, which is voice to skull technology. They put a
Mhm.
mental message. And for me, it wasn't an auditory message. It was definitely mental. So I know the difference between that and an auditory message. And I want to make these clear because I know somebody recently accused me on, somewhere they wrote a review saying that um, they understand that what I'm saying is interesting, but that I have schizophrenia. And I do not have schizophrenia. I've never been diagnosed with that. And I
Yeah.
don't have auditory hallucinations. So auditory hallucinations is a part of schizophrenia, and I've never had anything like that. So
Hmm.
unfortunately, there is a lot of things like this that go on in the world, and people kind of need to wake up to the crimes that are happening, crimes against humanity, based on what we're discussing here today. So I would definitely look into maybe having some, if you look at your parents, your family, were your family involved in the military? Did you have some type of DNA that they're looking at? And for DNA, I'm talking about they're looking for specific bloodlines. They're looking for something they call a lost royal bloodline. If you are any type of descendant of some of the royal houses, and there's a lot of us that are,
Mm.
and we're kind of like the lost royal bloodline. We're not grown up rich or anything like that, but you have that DNA. And if you
Yes.
think about it, if you think about all the way back in ancient past, what made somebody a royal? How did they, you know, put somebody in that position. That's something how did that happen? How did it start? How does somebody become a royal and somebody's not? And they're looking at possibly a different DNA or some type of innate psychic abilities and things like that. So for me, it definitely is probably like an innate ability that I have based on my own past lives and things inside me, that this ability, you know, is there. So, I definitely would look into that.
Yeah, and I have
Yeah,
to honestly
definitely.
say, just real quick about the reviewer who reviewed your book. No one will, put all this information about how they, just were tortured. I mean, the things that you went through were unbelievable. If you wanted to write it as fiction, people would like, oh yeah, okay, that's fiction, right? But let alone
Mhm.
tell your truth and to tell what actually happened to you is incredible. And you could have just put it out there as fiction. No, but you're trying to open people's eyes and, say that this really happens and this really goes on.
And you know what? I question, of course, we're all human and we question what we experience. We question our own beliefs. And I think that's been the most amazing thing where I challenged everything that I grew up believing, everything I thought I knew. I had to challenge that in order to come to the conclusion that I had just been, taken into this program and used.
Yeah.
And there was so much evidence everywhere for me that was just coming straight at me. And for me to push it away, it would have been just a fear-based action for me to just say, no, I'm not even going to think about this because it's too scary. And I do, meet people that they just, and I don't have any harsh feelings toward it. They just don't want to know. It's
Yeah,
the truth. It's the truth.
that is very
They
true.
just do not want to know. And that's okay. Would not want to force anybody to see this with their own eyes. If they're that afraid, don't look at it then.
Yeah.
But
Or
there
hope it
are a
never
lot of
happens to
people.
you also. While you're
Yeah,
not looking, hope that you or your child or your loved one, this doesn't happen to.
or somebody, something like that. It's just we can't look away from all of the, things that happen in the world. And for me, I can't. So that's where I've come upon this, trying to make sure people know about it. Even if they, assume things about me, I still have to keep doing it because I said this last time, I promised my father that I would take this on and tell people about what happened to me without being afraid. And of course, when I first started, I had a lot of fear because I knew what people would say, I knew what people would think, and I know people don't want to really know about this. And who would want to know about it? It's not like something you want to do on a Sunday afternoon to talk about something like this. But for me, this is very important for people to know. So I was going to say I once they put me in Project Traveler, they tried a few different things. They took me into Mrs. W, actually was what I call her, as the programmer. Her name is
Mhm.
Mrs. W. That's what I called her. And she had me do it. They wanted to really make it measurable what they thought I could do with, my psychic ability. They wanted to make it measurable because they wanted to be scientific. This is about having real techniques that they can use for soldiers in war, things like that. So there was one thing that they were trying, like sensory deprivation, and it wasn't in water. I know everybody's seen Stranger Things and they do some things there, but I was just sitting in a chair in a dark room. I had, just a nightgown on. They had me hooked up to an IV and they had a blindfold on my eyes for some reason. And I didn't get food or anything for 3 days. Nobody came in to see me. I don't even know how I used the bathroom. I don't think I did. I don't even remember
Yeah.
using the bathroom, anything like that. But when I remote viewed it and remote viewed the memory to look at it, to see it, I felt I felt really conflicted because at that moment they let me be who I was, and I was able to, kind of open myself up so much that became like kind of like this inner portal. So
Mhm.
part of what I can do is open myself up. It's a form of trance mediumship. I call it spirit hosting, but I open myself up and it's almost like a voluntary possession. So I allow beings to take over my body. And for some reason, it does not harm me mentally or physically or emotionally. It just doesn't. It's a real ability in my opinion. And I'm not the first one to do this. There's, cultures throughout history have been practicing this as part of their religion. They call it letting the spirit ride you. So I'm not the first person. I'm just somebody that they figured. And I'm not the only one that they have. I've met other people that we had done we did work together for different elite groups. We were doing it together. So it wasn't just me. They had identified other, probably children that could do the same thing.
And what age were you again?
7.
Oh, so through this whole time you were at about the 7.
Yes. And when they had me in the room, I felt fine. I mean, in my mind, I felt good because I always push myself into a very peaceful place when I'm allowing something else to take over. My highest self stays aware and stays protective of me, but I definitely can push myself somewhere and allow something else to take over, something seeing through my eyes, speaking through my mouth. And that's what they wanted to measure. So when I would allow like an entity to take over my body, they would, do vitals and take measurements and things to see, if there was any kind of like energy output, I'm thinking, energetic output, something like that, that they could, write down and see it for, themselves. Because this is definitely something way on the unknown and I have a feeling that they really didn't know what they were doing. I
Yeah.
don't, I don't think that this is definitely an experiment. And I always wished I could have told them that they were incorrect because they thought that I was possessed and they were wrong. That what they were looking at inside me, and it was just something that I was and I had been in a past life, and I can't erase it, and nor do I want to. And you know, not everybody believes in past lives. I wasn't even sure I believed in it until I
Mhm.
saw it for myself and saw it with my own eyes. I wasn't sure I believed until that time. And then I know what I am, and I'm not ashamed of it, especially when I think I'm trying to do good for the world now. I mean, how can somebody judge me on something that happened? I don't even know if it was a million years ago, thousands years ago. It was so, how can I be judged on being like a dark entity in the past? Because a lot of people have been a lot of different things in this world, and everybody should look at themselves in in the inside. Who do you think you've been before? Even
Mhm.
as my past as like a serial killer, that was something they definitely thought that they could utilize for, future missions and future jobs. They were probably excited about seeing that I had something in me that could, you know, be,
Detach, and if they needed to send you on
yeah,
a mission at, whatever location that you were willing to
yes.
do, with no remorse and so on, no
And
feeling.
they train you. They train you in your altars to have that same ability anyways, to have no remorse and no
Mhm.
feeling. They have like Black Widow altars that they use for that. They have beta altars, which are kind of like the sexual manipulation altars that they use for that program too. So there's a lot of different ways that they can do it. But like I said, when I was in that chair and I was in there for days, I felt very conflicted after because humans were torturing me in the actual hospital, but all these swirling entities and demonic presences that were inside me, they kept me alive. They
Mm.
were the ones protecting me and they were the ones sustaining me to stay alive. That's very frustrating for me to think that the humans are the one doing this and these entities who I'm supposed to think of as evil and dark and trying to take over me and hurt me, they're the ones that were protecting me and keeping me alive. Uh,
Wow.
and I've learned so much by doing this work. I've been doing this for a few years now. And I've learned so much about what I thought, everything I thought, I've seen like the entire opposite of it now. And it's like it's so hard to think that like I can't believe I feel like I was programmed to think a certain way about the world, about dark and light, about, good and evil. I had so many different ideas about it, and now it's completely different. And like I have to have a different view on it now because of the way what I can do and what I've seen myself with my own eyes and my own experiences. It's just, feeling like the things that are inside me, when I have something that's very light inside me and then I switch over and do something very dark, it feels the same. And
Mm.
for me, that was a huge eye opener. And when I'm under this very deep trance or very deep shift in consciousness and I, kind of attach to a different part of the universe, I can also attach to different parts of these beings. And when I attach to the inside of it and I saw it for what it was, they are not unlike us. So it's really strange to see how we're programmed to blame them for everything that's happening in this world. They even told me that. They're saying you've been trained to blame us for everything. But who is hurting you? Who is there hurting you? And they are pretty much saying the monster is next door. You're worried about us. You're looking for us in every dark corner, every alleyway, every dark corner of your mind. You're trying to find a demon, and the demon is next door. These people next door are hurting you. These people next door are killing your children. They're taking your children, murdering, raping, pedophilia, everything. They're saying you're blaming it. We always have this blanket statement, Lucifer or Satan is the one that's causing all this. It's us and humanity. We have done this to ourselves. In my opinion, from what I've seen in my experience, that's what I've seen, is that we're trying to blame a lot of this, old ancient, belief systems, and just there's so much out there. If somebody was able to open up to a trance state like this, there's so much out there. And these beings go beyond what we can just, identify them as something like a demonic entity. It's beyond that. There is literally something way beyond that, very much. And even,
So if
yes,
we are talking about a demonic being opposed to an
yes,
angel, can you differentiate the two, like, to where one is good and one is evil, or,
no,
like, okay, so you can't. Okay.
because that would mean I'm going to say that about myself
Hmm.
because I was a dark entity and it's still there, just like everybody
You
else
mean in a
has their.
past life, or what do you mean
It's
by?
still there. Yes, I was a dark. I am, but you can't erase it. It's still
Yeah.
me. It's still me. So if somebody says, is a dark entity evil and are you a bad thing? Then you're asking me if I consider myself a bad thing. And I
Oh.
don't. And I don't. I consider myself having a particular role in a particular experience that I chose. I myself, when I was a dark entity, said I chose that role because I felt it was my job to bring that darkness experience to people. And then when they wanted it, I brought it to them. And I said, and myself as the jinn, I said, I didn't know I was evil because I didn't know the word evil. I didn't know what evil meant. I just knew what I was and that I was just something that came here to
Yeah, you
provide
mean as the
darkness to the
being.
world.
Okay, but as the being, but not as a human who's doing evil acts, right? Correct.
What do you mean?
You mean as the spiritual being that you didn't know what was going on, or how you were doing, whether the acts you were doing were evil or not. But as a human, though, when you're being possessed by something, like there are people that are doing
Mhm.
demonic acts, does that separate the difference?
For me, it's different. For me, and I don't want to tell somebody what to believe because I'm not a religious person. I consider myself spiritual. So
Mm.
I don't want to speak in religious tones or for people to think that I'm making this a religious talk, and it's not.
Yeah.
It's
Mhm.
based on direct psychic experiences that I've had with myself.
Okay, got
So
it.
um just it's been surreal. And it's been surreal for the fact that I've had not just, and it's not just demonics, it's, very, very high level religious figures that I've let speak through me, and they feel the same. It feels the same as when a demonic entity is inside me. I apologize to everyone for that because I know that is different from what everybody would expect. People would expect there to be a huge difference between the dark and the light. And let me tell you, when I looked in the inside of these things, we were all from the same place, unfortunately, for people. And that's going to be hard for people to understand. They have to do their own soul searching. That's what I found, and that's what I experienced. And that's what changed my life and at recognizing my own darkness, my own shadow, and what I was before has given me the most freedom that I could ever experience. I would never want that to change ever in any experience in any life. I always want to know who I am and what I did before because it's made me who I am. It's made me able to do this. It's given me the strength to go out and tell people about this and about my experiences and what had happened.
Yeah, which most people will never be able to do. I
Yes,
mean, I'm still trying to learn how to meditate. But with that being said, let's take a break. But with
sure.
all that you said and me bringing up the demonic energy and people, I want to get into the rituals of why people of power do what they do. And just like you were talking about, how you don't separate the two. I want to know why people are pulling on certain deities or gods or demonic energies, whatever they're pulling on to gain power through sex rituals, through manipulation and all that good stuff. So we'll be right back.
Thank
Let's
you.
get into it.
Step beyond the ordinary with Strange Darkness Radio After Dark, the series that fearlessly explores the topics too intense, too controversial, and too chilling for our main show or even our bonus episodes. If you're ready to uncover what truly lurks in the shadows, secrets, stories, and mysteries that most won't dare to touch, After Dark is your invitation into the unknown. Experience the side of Strange Darkness Radio that only emerges when the lights go out. Listen now on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Have a story or a theory to share? Drop us a message on SpeakPipe and join the dark conversation. Step into the shadows with us. Your voice could be the next mystery we explore.
All right. So, yes, Olivia, let's get into that. And again, because Jamie, you've experienced the darker side of, I'm going to say, human nature. And people with, you can call it demonic energies, you can call it whatever you want, but these people are, meant to do you harm. And sometimes they know what they're doing, sometimes they don't know what they're doing. So I even believe Olivia can agree to that, to where people, sometimes don't have control. And,
I think sometimes they're just, following orders. I know that, a couple of the younger guys who were in this group, they mentioned chain gang quite a few times and that they didn't want to go back. So it made me feel like they were following orders, or they were going to have some kind of consequences. And my situation, was a little different than Olivia's. Mine was with Freemasons, and I do believe there was some military for sure. And it was kind of crazy because I felt like, this is, call me wild, but I felt like they thought that I had the ability for them to make them rich, like to make them money. Right now, the only like ability that like I know that I have, because I'm surely not rich, not yet. I'm pretty rich, but you know what I mean. I do have some healing abilities, that's for sure. And in what I do with my work and the things that I've seen, and helping people, definitely. And I do have dreams that come true, but yeah, like definitely not like not psychic abilities. So mine was, different. And definitely not in like a medical setting. Mine was more of like, I feel like a stage setting, and there was like always more people there than I could see, if that makes sense. And I don't know, Olivia, if you've experienced that, where there are, more people there, but you can only see like one or two, but that there's more people. So
now, is this during a sex ritual, or is this what is
yes,
okay?
all the time, really, but definitely, especially then.
Olivia, what was your experience? I know the last time we stopped, I believe you were talking about a situation where you went to someone's home and
Yes.
it was a person that you were, I think you were sent there and
Yes.
they requested your services. And go ahead and tell the.
Yeah. So once I grew into adulthood and was trained in a few different things, I was really good at this spirit hosting. So there are families who we consider like elites in this world, and they have ties to the government. They have ties, they are very financially set. And there's some of these families that are doing something called connecting to their what they call it like a familiar daemon or a familiar spirit. And this is something that's brought down through the family line. So this particular family that I was assigned to, they had been connected to this familiar daemon since probably like in the 1500s. So it's definitely something that came down their family line. And for the family, they in their minds believe that this is how they stay in power. This is how they stay rich. This is how they, keep their businesses secure, is through this connection to this daemon. And, this is the word that we use even when I'm under trance. I don't say demon. I don't even think of that. We say daemon. And
Okay.
it's an older word that doesn't necessarily mean the same thing. They've kind of like pushed it into the word demon, but for us it's daemon. And it
Okay.
it kind of means like, from what the spirits have told me, that it means kind of like ancient or old one kind of thing, so these are kind of like what they consider like elder gods. So, and it's really interesting how some people that were once worshipped as a god now in our time frame has become a demon. So that's interesting, because this particular family, they were connected to a being called Bacchus, and Bacchus actually used to be called Dionysus. So he used to be a Greek god of wine, and now all of a sudden in our lifetime, now they say he's a demon. So it's interesting how culture shifts the perspective of how we view various beings, throughout our lifetimes. So this particular family, they are a cult of Bacchus, and they do like rituals periodically. It's very expensive, and the government and different agencies, one called Monarch Solutions, they have a whole catalog. They not only do sexual services, but Monarch Solutions also has occult services, and it's kind of like mixed together.
Yeah.
So this family, they purchased this service through their attorney, and I mean, I kind of remote viewed it to see different names and things. I can't really release that, but it's, this family was out in New York, and they do this yearly. That was kind of like an annual ritual for them. And to me, it wasn't what, you know, if I were to think of like what a satanic ritual would be or something like that, this is not what anybody would think it was. For me, it didn't look like that. So when I got there, they treated me pretty well. Obviously I'm forced to be there. I have no say in when the government wants me to go do, or a mercenary contract that I have to do. If they say I have to do something, there is no. You don't say no. There's no questions asked. You do what they say, and that's about it. And especially they would activate something inside you called an altar. So all they have to do is they can use codes, they can use music, tones, different things. And if they turn that altar on inside you, which is almost like not necessarily a different personality, but almost like a person inside you. I feel like I have an army inside me, because I have
Hmm.
118 altars, and specific altars are trained to do different things that me, myself, and my original self, which is speaking right now, would not be able to do. So I don't want anybody to think that I think I'm a badass. I don't. It's, sometimes it's like my altars that, do these things. My
Yeah.
original self, though, is the psychic one. I can do this, as a normal human every day, I can do these psychic things. But so what they wanted us to do, for them, they had decided they wanted to have dinner with their god. So they had me come there, and there was another gentleman there. I'll talk about that in a minute, but he could do the same thing I could do. And what they wanted was to have dinner with him. So they had me, and there wasn't like a formal ritualistic practice. And what is strange is those rituals aren't needed. None of that. When we think of like all these different rituals to call the gods and all that, it's not even needed. I do it within a count of 10.
Yeah.
The God comes to earth, their God came to earth within a count of 10. So all these different books and rituals and sayings and, chants, none of it is needed if you have a person that can do this. It literally takes me 10 seconds to open myself up to another realm and have this thing take over my body. And that's what I did for them. I let Bacchus take over my body. And when was inside my body, I tried to stand up, and it felt like, I couldn't even figure out how to walk, because Bacchus hasn't been in human form a lot on Earth. So for him, it felt like 200 pounds on each leg, and I felt like I was trudging through like a moat or like mud, trying to get to the dinner table where they wanted me to sit. And I sat at the table and they had this like big buffet spread out and they looked very excited,
Yeah.
happy, excited. And there was a lot of different people. I think they were one family, but they all had different looks. There was no children there. It was all adults and they weren't wearing any weird outfit. They were wearing normal everyday clothes. So it was different from what we see in the movies, like with the black
Mm.
robes and things. I didn't see that. I saw them look like normal people, jeans and, shirt. They look normal and they
Yeah.
were all excited. And when I started to eat, though, is kind of like Bacchus got really pissed off because I started eating and I ate like I'm not a human at that point. So I was eating like an animal, ripping and tearing at the food they had provided for me and things. And he was not happy because when he looked at his followers, they looked disgusted. And let me tell you, I felt his emotion. He was not happy about that. He's
Yeah.
like, how dare you? Pretty much, how dare you? I'm a god. You called me down here. And then they started asking him like this is what they really wanted to do is ask him questions, This is their time. They can ask him direct question. Their God is here. And they would ask him goofy questions about, stuff that you would ask like an everyday psychic. And he was so angry. He's like, you called me down here for, tricks and treats. Like who do
Yeah.
pretty much like he was saying, like, who do you think I am? Like you don't call a god down here to ask them, how your business is going to do next year or, who your husband's cheating with, things like that. He was not happy.
Mm.
So that's one of the things that they had me do is do this hosting, like a dark hosting for them, and they get to have dinner with their god. There was other times where they had me and this other gentleman, be nude, and they would have us lay next to each other, and both of us would do it. We would allow something to take over our body, and there's entire legion that could come through to you if you want to, and it doesn't harm us. If we're a spirit host, it won't harm us. So but what some of these people, these elites doing, or these families, I call them the families or whatever, what they're doing is, sometimes having sexual relations while the entity is inside you because they believe, they're having physical relations with their God. And if any type of progeny was created from something like that, they consider that a demonic bloodline. That's what they consider it. They consider that they're making like kind of like an army of Antichrist, like because, that thing is inside you. So for me, it was seeing that with my eyes, when I'm doing remote viewing and things like that. It was really interesting to see, you know, what they were trying to do and what they were attempting and what they had ideas about, what they thought in their minds, and I thought it was like, how could they even think that that would work? Until Bacchus told me he considers me his progeny. He
Mhm.
feels that he had some type of connection with my father, my physical father, and that, that's how I was born. He felt like he had taken him over and created me. So, that particular entity, I don't even really consider him an entity. Like, I don't even know what he is. When I see him, he looks like a a bull. He doesn't necessarily look
Look
like,
like a human.
no, he doesn't look like a human. But he looks like an animal, like a bull. And I'm not afraid of him. I'm not afraid of
Mm.
any of them. And this is the one thing that I've learned from doing this work and letting things take over my body. There's nothing to fear in this world or the next. People that are afraid of this, you're going to keep being afraid. There is nothing to fear. You're stronger than it. You can push anything away if you don't want it around you. There is no problem. Because I used to be a dark entity. And let me tell you, if somebody said, get away from me with very, strong conviction, it would feel like somebody threw a lightning ball at my chest and I would be pushed back. So if
Yeah.
anybody is ever afraid of anything, you tell it, get out of your space, get away from me. It's over. They don't have the power that you think they do. They only have the power you're giving it. So, and that's a real thing. I was a dark entity. I know if you said get away from me, it felt like a fireball hit me in the chest. It's very strong. Your consent and your conviction is very strong. So use it. If you feel like something is in your presence, you don't want it around, or you don't want that energy, use that. Use that against them.
Mm. So when they're calling on these particular entities, it's not necessarily whether it's a whole sex thing. It's just for whether it's, information. Some just want to have conversation. Some just want to, like you said, know the future, the past, or what's, currently happening. But how, as a, how do they gain anything from this other than, whatever that particular
They
question?
don't. They
Okay.
don't. Because Bacchus told me, the actual god that they worship told me, I do nothing for them, he said. He
Yeah.
said, that's in their own minds that they think that I'm doing something. He said, I'm just here for the rewards that they give me. That's what he says. He says,
Hmm.
I'm just here for what they offer me, which is reverence. Because he's had that addiction cycle of where he needs to have reverence to live. And a lot of these beings, they consider themselves elder gods, and they told me the gods are dying because there's no one here to worship them. If you don't have worship, the gods die, is what they say. And they say
Yeah.
we are witnessing currently the death of the gods because new gods are being created. And you don't need that particular, what do you call it? Like a victimizer. Like they used to take on the role of like a victimizer. We when we think about it, they're the ones doing all the bad things in the world and things. They said we don't need that anymore because the monster is next door, like I said before. They said they don't need us as much because there's so much dark in the world already from your own people that what are we for? And they feel like they're dying because of it. Would they like to come back? Yes, because they've told me that they would like to come back and take the world because they said it was their world first. But, they said people don't believe us anymore because there's so much dark in the world. They don't need this outside force to be seen as evil. The evil is, within us, within humanity ourselves. We don't need an outside source to touch that.
Yeah. Well, someone's doing a lot of trickery because there seems to be a lot of powerful, evil people in powerful positions that are able to maintain these positions. And then we, learn later that they were doing the most explicably craziest, nefarious things to other humans to stay in these positions. So I just wonder what.
In my opinion,
Mhm.
a lot of it has to do with the people in power.
Yeah.
And to me, I don't blame it on spirits or ghosts. It's humans, and at the top, it's governmental. And beyond that, whatever is above it. And I have never met one person that knows exactly who is in charge. Not
Yeah.
one person. Not one whistleblower that I've met so many now. I have not met one person that we can definitely say these are the people in charge because none of us exactly know. Nobody has found that out yet. But for me, I consider, the people in charge, the government, the military, and beyond. I don't feel like, to me, in my opinion, I don't know necessarily think that elites are as strong as we think they are. They base a lot of things on, money and power.
Yeah.
But to me, like the military and the government and mercenary groups have, to me, they have more power than some of those elites. Because what is their money going to do up against people that have technology, you know, power in terms of physical power and things like that? To me, that is where power is. But I think everyone has their own idea of what
Mhm.
what power is. And to me,
Yeah.
in my experience and what I've experienced with the government, that's them. They're the powerful ones. I
Mm.
don't think that, elites are strong because they know one of these demonic entities. I really don't care. It doesn't harm me in any way. I'm not afraid of it, for one thing. And I think a lot of fear is what leading people to think that, it's a demon. Oh no. I'm not scared of them. I don't care. You
Yeah.
could just say, get away from me, and they're gone. Like, why
No,
are
but
we
imagine
afraid?
this.
Why are
Just
we
how the
afraid?
government but just how the government was, trained you and utilized you for certain aspects. If, let's say, a person like Sean Diddy Combs got a person like yourself, and you were able to, whether you were able to peer into people's thoughts, remote view certain situations or
Hmm.
meetings, do all these things and then use them for nefarious purposes, and the person is believing that they're, feeding, these deities or, gods or entities or whatever they're doing. And then they're utilizing this information that you're gaining and garnering for them, for nefarious purposes. And so that's
That's human though. That's a
no, no,
human
no,
doing it. Yeah, that's a human doing that.
no, but yeah, it's a human, meaning you're the human doing it, but you're using spiritual tools that.
I don't use the demons. I use my higher self.
Well, yeah, but I'm
Yeah.
saying, I'm just talking about the layman's person is not
Yeah.
looking at it like that, because you know
Mhm.
what you're using, you know what it is, and
Yeah.
everything else. It's like, we only know what people call certain things and
Yeah.
what, the Bible says or what this book says.
Yes.
So we, use different terminologies for things because we're just unaware. But
Do I think
to
that
us, it's
there's
like
darkness?
magic.
Yeah. Do I
Yeah,
think that there's people doing things like that? Yes, I know there is, because
yeah,
I've seen that kind of stuff. That stuff goes on all the time. I've met so many people that have gone through real satanic ritual abuse. I've met so many people. I'm actually in a support group for people that are experiencing satanic ritual abuse. So I meet people all the time. I know it's real. I know
hmm,
that people are using their belief system to hurt and torture other people. I know that.
yeah,
Do they have anything real that comes from it? I I don't know. I doubt it probably if they unless they have somebody that can really, go into a deep trance. But what does that matter? Just because I put somebody in my body and they speak, how is
yeah,
that empowering you? What is that doing for you? It's a human that taking one little snippet of information and thinking, like, even the entities tell me that these people think that we're doing something for them. We're not. They said these people were born with money. That's how they're rich.
yeah.
They keep this money through their generational line. That's what I was told. I can't
Mhm.
speak for everyone. I'm just speaking on what I've learned, and that's what I've been told. So is Diddy doing who knows? He could probably be involved with the government. He could be MK Ultra himself. All his
Yeah.
kids could be MK Ultra. All the people he's around could be trafficked from MK Ultra. It's definitely possible. I don't know. I haven't remote viewed it myself, but that's entirely possible
You
because
should do that.
that happens. That happens. They have so many different divisions that the government infiltrates in order to, make people do things, and a lot I know they make people do things because they used me for that. I
Hmm.
know that. I know that. They would have us when I was young, they used something called a monarch altar, and I had a specific monarch altar that was acclimated for pain and sexual pain and would mix the two together. They train you for that. Unfortunately, that even as a child, they train you to be
You mean to not have pain or to have pain? Or
to
to
be
use
attracted to
it?
be attracted to pain and sex even at 7 years old.
Mm.
Talk about having, an affinity for like something like a BDSM or something at a very young age, like, 11 or something
Oh, I
like that,
see.
without having knowledge of why you are or
Yeah.
what is it. So they train your alter to, be attracted to pain and sexual trauma. They train you for that. So I wrote about this in my book, and it is a uncomfortable topic for people. I try to speak about it frankly,
Hmm.
just because that's the only way I know how to talk about it. And so they did use me for that. And, people would come pick me up. My dad would kind of take me out the back door, and he wasn't allowed to ask questions. I would just go in the car, and they either had us entertain gentlemen, older gentlemen, and it wasn't always just for sex. Sex was never the number one reason. Never, not
Yeah.
once. It was a way to get things, but it wasn't, oh, we're going to send you this person just because they want to have sex. It was never about that. It was always something behind it. And they always activated an altar that had a photographic memory because that's what it was. I was recording information for them so they could debrief at a later time. They debrief with hypnosis. All that information is locked in my brain.
Yeah.
They
See,
could do,
that's where I was going with the
yes.
utilizing people for the
Of
information
course.
through
Of
these
course.
practices.
Because if you're around people, okay, so this is what I've learned when I was doing this. The, if people think that you're afraid of them, they feel comfortable. Like, of course, I was a young girl. So, of
Hmm.
course, I was afraid of these big, bigger, older adult men. And then they felt comfortable to say whatever they wanted to around me because they thought that they had control over me or power over me. So they didn't think that, I would ever do anything. And I didn't. But that made them have loose lips. And that's
Yeah.
what the government and the people in charge wanted. And I'm not going to say it was just because there's many different facets to the government, and there's a lot of private military groups that I was forced to work for. So if we thinking of the government as just one little group of people, no, there's so many extensions of this, you would never even be able to figure out who all these different extensions are and all the arms of it. It's unknown to everybody. So that's what they were doing. They were trying, and they use it for blackmail, back for leverage. That was a big word, leverage. We're building leverage over these people so we could get them to do something maybe a little bit down the road, because we have them, on camera, or we know they were with you when you were, they utilized you, they took you and
I
did
mean,
whatever
just
with
even
you.
as the age issue in your film, whether or not it's being filmed, who knows with all the, whether they're using technology to, trap someone. There's all kind of facets.
And they did the crazy, and some of these men were very sadistic in a way, and they wouldn't have any qualms about hurting a child, none whatsoever, because I experienced it. And
Yeah.
they had no issue with harming a child. And it's just it's real. That's what happens. It happens in normal everyday life. I've worked in different places, where I've done like some social work things, and I've seen it with just in my normal life. Like,
Mhm.
it's insane. Like, it was almost like an epidemic from what I was seeing. Especially if you're seeing it every day, it's very traumatic. And to be experiencing it and then remembering it, that can be traumatic, and remembering some of that thing. So, this whole Diddy thing, could they have been building leverage against people? Absolutely. Who knows, he could be an asset himself, building leverage against all these people he invites to these parties. They
Yeah.
probably have so much on camera, so much there, that it could destroy so many people's lives. And whether it be for power, for money, or some other reason, all these different groups have their own agenda. Do I think that he was the one in charge? No, I don't.
Yeah.
I don't think
Yeah.
he
Just
was.
like the Harvey Weinstein. I
No,
mean,
I don't
mhm.
think he was the person in charge. Yeah, they pick somebody kind of, reckless to do these things, but they also pick somebody that can, take the fall. Like, he can take the fall, and so did, like, the other one. They pick these people specifically for somebody that's going to take the fall at a future time, based on
Mhm.
everything that happens. Because you get, just like my father, it's the same thing. They get reckless, they start messing up the whole program, and once that happens, they have to take you down. It's
Wow.
not that different. That's the way they did it to my dad. He was doing amazing, making all this money, rich, and they had to take him down because he was being reckless, and he could have got them in trouble, just the same as these, recent happenings. If they become reckless, they're going to get, the people that are really in charge in trouble or looked at, and they can't have that.
Mhm.
They can't have that. So that's not going to happen. You're not
Yeah.
going to find out who was over the top, or who, was asking to have things done. And there was probably layers and layers. It went high and high and high. You won't know, you know. There's
Yeah.
always these middlemen, the middle henchmen, so the people on top never get their hands dirty. Never. You will never know who's on top.
Yeah. I don't know if I should say this or not, but
Say it.
have you ever tried to remote view that, those that were in power, or, some of the,
Of course.
smaller
Yeah,
people
I've done
maybe?
it.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I've done it. I've done it. I've remote view handlers. I've broken into like military bases, and I've gotten kicked out of there a few times. Um, been practicing doing like remote influencing, trying to like get people to get on their computers and give me the information, things like that. And I've had some success, but it's really interesting to see that the people in charge think we're so weak that we'll never be able to figure this out. They've told us that. When I'll let something like that or connect to something like that, and they just say, This is ridiculous. Like, why are you even trying this?" They said, "Nobody's going to believe you. They're all
Yeah.
going to think everyone's going to think you're crazy. And what are you going to do about it in the end? We have so much power, so much money. Nothing you say will ever harm us." That's what they say, and they're confident in what they're doing, that nobody's ever gonna be able to take them down, and they haven't so far. But there's a time and a place for everything to happen. And I feel like we're moving into a time period where things are going to be exposed, you know extremely exposed, including these programs are going to be exposed, and people are going to have to come out of their hiding places and really look at the crimes that have been committed against children.
Hmm. Oh, for sure. Definitely. Jamie, any questions?
So many. Um, okay, going back to you were talking about erecting an altar. Can you explain what that process looks like.
Yeah, so an altar is a piece, a compartmentalized piece of my mind that was created with extreme trauma, whether it be physical, emotional, or sexual. That was all created in the psychiatric hospital. I call it the playroom because that's where a lot of the physical abuse took place, was in a playroom. So they pushed us so far that our minds kind of shattered and created all these different pieces and holes, and they took these little pieces and they built them back up. Pretty much all of them have their own names, everything. Like I have one that's named Penelope, I have one that's named Jennifer, one that's named Stephanie, my occult altar is named Judith. And they used to think that something like this was called multiple personality disorder. To me, that doesn't even encompass what really goes on in the mind, because I've been able to remote view the inside of my own mind and to see. And let me tell you that it's so complex. You could never envision what goes on inside your mind. There's like worlds inside you, and these altars create worlds inside you. They have their own lives because of the worlds they create inside you. My particular altars, and through my healing process, I work with very closely. I have a mentor that I work very closely with, and she has helped me put these altars to sleep. That means they are no longer active. Some people are considered active assets, some not, but these are not considered active because I worked with them. And in the end, these altars, all 118 of them, they decided to go into retirement to give me peace where I can use my original self to, be out in the world. So it's been a healing and exploration process just for me to have my original self back, because I had a complete personality change when I did that. When I retired my altars, I had a complete personality change. And it was something new to me because I haven't seen my original self in so long. I really didn't know who I was, and it's definitely a learning process even now. Now that I'm in my 50s now, but it's a learning process.
And so, yes, I've heard of this, but in um, what I've heard of it as called soul fragmenting. Have you heard of that at all?
I've heard of it. I don't particularly call myself a fragmented soul. I understand the concept, and I've heard other people talk about it. But from what I've envisioned with myself and being connected to different realms and things like that, I don't see my soul as fragmented. I don't see it because I've seen my soul do things and on different levels and, be able to connect to things. I don't feel trapped. And other people, they talk about the prison being a prison planet, the earth being a prison planet, things. I don't feel like that. I don't feel trapped because I'm not trapped, because I can use my abilities to escape this world whenever I want in a count of 10.
Is remote viewing like astral projection?
Everybody does it differently. For me, I use a few different things. When I remote view, I'm actually going to the scene. So I'm using astral projection, bilocation, and spirit hosting to do the remote viewing. So there's probably 4 or 5 different abilities that I'm putting in there just to do the remote viewing.
Okay, so when I've heard of like, what can you do if somebody like say astral projects into your home and you don't want them there? How do you make them leave?
So this is interesting. So some people, have you heard of the concept of like shadow people?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. So when I show up in somebody's house, remote viewing to try to see what they're doing, I look like a ghost, like a shadow person, because I am using the ghost dimension. So if I can see ghosts and they can see me and I'm not dead, it's really interesting that when you're astral projecting and remote viewing, I'm using like almost like a different travel path, the same as what a ghost uses, because they can see me and I can see them. So sometimes if you see a shadow person or what you think is a ghost, it could possibly be a remote viewer looking at you, or getting information about you. Some have been tasked. There's a lot of remote viewers that are working for the government and other mercenary groups. It's their job. There's various different groups that are doing this kind of work, just like I did the work. So they're doing it too. And they're currently active. There's a lot of current active government, remote viewers. They've been on like big shows recently talking about their remote viewing and what they've seen and things like that. It's not just me. There's a ton of people out there now going mainstream talking about how they worked for the government and they were doing remote viewing.
So, but how would you make one leave that is remote viewing in your home?
I don't know that because nobody's ever made me leave. The only person that has made me leave
Is
is
another person with
another
that
remote
ability?
viewer.
Yeah.
Another remote viewer can make me leave because they know how to like
Push you out.
kick me in the stomach with energy. Like
Right.
I haven't had a normal human make me leave, but another remote viewer, yes. I've had remote viewers hit me with energetic bats. I've had them like kick me out of places, I almost had a run-in with the psychic assassin actually not that long ago. And that was a trippy thing. I hadn't had that happen before. And I haven't done it since because it kind of nerved me out. But I was going really, really deep. I was really trying to work hard to get new information for the world. And I was there. I had it. And I was at a really it's coming out in my third book, but it was an important spot and it was important information for the world. And whoever was in charge didn't want this happening. So towards the end of the session, when I was doing it, I started to get kind of like I felt something. I just knew it. You're in a different state of mind. So I knew something was there and I couldn't figure out what it was. And I kept saying, I kind of feel something. I don't know. I don't know what this is. And, in my mind, it was all black. And in the blackness, I saw a hand start coming through like almost like in my head. It was in my head coming through my head. And we immediately had to close session because that's psychic assassins. And I was able to get the name of the agency before we closed out, but it was an attempt. Like they see what I'm doing, they see how far I'm going. And if something would have happened to me, I don't know, like they can cause brain aneurysms, something can physically happen to you. I've known other people that when I was in the programs, I didn't do psychic assassin work. I wasn't good at that because my energy I pull the energy in. Like I'm a receiver. So I'm pulling things inward. Things are in me. And psychic assassins, they're pushing energy out. They're expellers. So I wasn't really made for that type of work, but I know that there are assets that can do that. They can push their energy out. They can make psychic needles. Like if they want to throw a needle at you, you'll feel it. You think you can't feel that energy, you'll feel it. I could have like I don't even know how I could have been harmed by just somebody pushing their hand through my head, energetically. That could have harmed me, depending on the level of psychic that they have. Some of these government psychics are very high level psychics. There's been books been written about this stuff. So it's really interesting. And I always say this, I'm just a girl and I'm like trying to get information for the world. And it's like I'm up against huge powers and people very trained, very heavily trained people. And I'm just a girl trying to do this for everybody and trying to help the world. So, I'm taking on a lot for this. A lot of risk. It's a lot of risk. I just want people to know I'm taking the risk. I don't want other people to try it. I'm the one that's been tasked, I made this promise to, different groups to do this for the world. So I wouldn't want anybody else to try it. I'll take the risk.
Well, let me ask you this question. What's the biggest truth that you've uncovered, whether it's just the knowledge that you're, talking about with all these abilities and all these past life abilities that you actually pull forward into utilizing, currently, because that's one of the things that you were able to do, right? Some of these abilities that you've had in past lives,
Yes.
you are now able to bring them forward.
Yes. And it doesn't matter who I was before. I want to make sure this information gets out to people and just awakens them, opens their eyes to it. I wouldn't want anything else except for them to just know what happened to us, and they can make their own, decisions on what they feel about it. But to me, the thing that's always in my mind, out of all the sessions I've done, out of all the information I've gotten, there's only the two things that are to me the most important is Project Oblivion and the Olympia group. And
Mm.
it's just that's to me, that's always in my mind, and that's what people talk about. And because that's what's going to linger after all this talk that I do about entities and things. That's the most important is Project Oblivion
Can you
and the
give us a
Olympia
little
group.
bit of information on Project?
Yeah. So Project Oblivion, and this is probably good for you to hear too. Um, so I connected to handlers and they told me that because I work very close with my hypnotherapist, that Project Oblivion is coming. They've given it the green light, and they're done with what we are attempting. So what they said is that they feel like some of us have really taken, kind of taken the reins of this and trying to get this information out in a very rational way. We're talking about too rational, where it's becoming too believable. And they said they cannot have that. They feel like our movement is kind of making some headway into seeing, and it has been. Look at the stuff that's coming out in the news and things more mainstream. That's always good for us, for people to see that there really is crazy shit happening behind the scenes. So Project Oblivion, they said they're going to have to take us down. And they have huge measures that they're going to implement. And one of the main groups that they're going to target is podcasters, because
Wow.
they said that these podcasters are the ones giving us the platform to get information to the world. And in doing that, we've created this network for disclosure, for full
Mhm.
disclosure. And this is what you're part of. This network is so important. And now they have all this technology they're using. So from what I got, it was a company called Roundtree, and they were using a couple of different technology things. And one of the things that they were using is something called spider tracks, and they're tracking everybody who talks to each other. So if I'm on your show and then you get somebody else in the same, we're all being tracked by this computer software. So they know who's talking to who, what you've said, what you plan on doing, everything. So they know who to target. So if you think you're hidden, most people, you're not. You're not. Nobody's hidden in this world. They
Yeah.
know everything. And that's the truth. That's what they said, that, and then they're coming after all of us. So you won't, they don't want, they want to shut down everyone's podcast that is giving people a voice. And a lot of people have had their podcast shut down. It's happened. It's already happened. Like, as soon as I started talking about it, somebody that had, whatever, he had like 20,000 followers or something, gone one day for nothing. And it's just, everybody's like freaking out. It's real though. That's what they said
Yeah.
they're going to do. They have to stop this movement in its tracks. And in a way, they do have to shut down podcasters, because that's who's been helping us. And it's the truth. They have helped us get information out to the world. And, it's been a huge deal for us to be able to come on shows and, speak our truth without, and a lot of people have been really supporting us in the movement. Like you
Mhm.
yourself, you've supported me in getting this information out without judgment. It doesn't matter
Yeah.
what I say. You never said, I don't believe you and you're you've never said that once. And
Oh, not
you're
at all.
very supportive of, what I'm saying without judgment. So, and that's what they say is a problem. They literally said that that's a problem. We can't have you doing that. We can't have you people, going out and giving these people a way to talk, and people will start believe, because they say people are going to start believing us, and
Mhm.
they can't have that. So
Yeah.
that's Project Oblivion. They're going to use technology. They're hurting people financially, physically, emotionally, so many different ways. And a
Wow.
lot of times you might not know that it was something other than a normal everyday occurrence. People
Mhm.
are getting really sick. People are losing their channels. People are losing their jobs. People are losing all their financials. Like, it's insane what they're trying to do.
Making it
They're,
extremely hard
they
for
said,
people to
we're
say.
gonna, completely explode your lives. That's what they told me.
Wow.
They said, you guys are all taken down, and how, you can't keep doing this. To me, that's very important to me. That's why that's the thing that always sticks in my mind is Project Oblivion, because I've seen people getting affected by this. People are getting really sick, and people losing their channels. It's so sad, because they work so hard and they've given, so many people a voice out in the world, to talk about these, horrendous things. And now to have them, lose that is it's very disheartening to see. But the other thing is the
Well,
Olympia
just
group.
one second.
Yes,
When
thank
you
you.
talk about that, I'm going to be a problem for them, because here's the thing.
Good.
As my channel grows, whether it grows or not, but it is growing, I will never charge. I will never put my voice or my show behind a paywall for no reason, because I hate when people do that. I end up following a show and they love it. The next thing I know, it's on Patreon. I got to pay X, Y, and Z. No, I want people to find out the truth, find out what's really and truly going on out there, and to give everyone a voice to speak their truth, because back in the day, you had to be on radio, and radio was extremely expensive. I mean, extremely expensive and illegal for people who to do it in their garage and would break into airways on the radio and everything else, and be taken to jail by the federal government and all that stuff. But now that podcasts are out there and able to broadcast their voices around the world. And yeah, so they'll definitely have a problem with me. That's one thing.
You definitely have to let us know if you experience anything out of the ordinary, that
I definitely will.
let us know, because then that would mean, they've seen what you're doing. They've seen the
Yeah.
work you're doing and how you're getting, just by this show, you're getting this information out to people just by doing this and having us two on here. That
Yeah.
so many people could probably hear this and be like, holy smokes, I didn't know things like this were happening.
Mhm.
We've already woken the world just with one show, and
Yeah.
that's what they don't want. And they
Mhm.
want to stop it. And they said they're coming hard at us. So, who knows what could happen from that? A lot. If they have a plan to stop it, it's going to be
Yeah.
through that. And I really like how people are taking the words Project Olivia now. I've seen it kind of a few times on the internet. People have heard it somewhere and are using it. I think this is Project Oblivion. They're trying to, take us down or something like that. And it's true, because that's what they told me. But one of the reasons why they're coming at this so hard is for the Olympia group. So I think I talked about this last time. The Olympia group is I I did a remote viewing, and it was amazing. And this person came through, and he said he had been waiting so long for me to be able to do this. Like, I haven't been doing this that long. I think maybe
Mhm.
5 years at the most. And I'm learning every day. I'm by means no professional. I'm not a professional at anything. I'm just a girl.
Yeah.
And so I met
With a
this
lot of abilities.
that are kind of wild and all over the place. But I met this gentleman, spiritually, astrally, but it's hard to say that, because I feel like I was physically taken to a base, because I
Mhm.
remember being on a base, but in the experience, it almost feels astral, but I feel physically that I was at a base. So I saw it. But the thing is, I don't want to freak anybody else, but he's about 12 to 15 years in the future. So this
Mhm.
is a general, and he said he can't tell us his name or the name of the base, because, as he said, it's not ready to be known. But he said he'd been waiting so long for me to be able to do this, to get this information. And do people know how hard it is for him to push this information back to us? And the reason why he's doing this is because it's so important. In 12 to 15 years, he said, we're in a very dire situation, humanity. And he said, if they're on the verge of a revolution there, when in 15 years, and he said, he needs the Olympia group. So come to find out, he says that the Olympia group, or a group of kids that are on Earth right now, they all volunteered at the same time to come here. They're about 9 years old to about 19, something like that. And he said those are the kids that in the future are going to turn the tides of the revolution more in our favor. But he said, if we don't have these kids, we're not going to win the war. We're not going to win. The revolution is going to be squashed. And we need this. He said it's a dire situation. He said Project Oblivion is still in his time, and that's 15 years from now. So
Wow.
he said that these kids are so important, because in the future, the wars are fought with technology. It's not all physical force, because everything is so advanced, it's
Yeah.
technology. And he said these kids that are born right now, the Olympia group, they're computer kids. Their brains are going to be like computers. And if we don't have them, we're in trouble. It gave me the chills when I was just talking about it. It must mean something. So
Mm.
he's he tried to show me, pictures of some of the kids that were kind of like flashing really quickly. And, some of the kids, if he knows who they are, he said the government knows who they are already. They already know who they are. They've identified these children. So he said they're coming after these children to kind of push them off their mission by various ways, like pushing them into addiction is one of the ways they said that they were going to try to stop them, is push them towards addiction. They even
Wow.
showed me a picture of one little girl that was like 15. He said they're going to push her towards addiction so she can't be one of the people to help, in the revolution. He said it's so important, and that the main message for us, he said, because, we were trying to tell him, like, it's dire here. We don't have any like cohesiveness. We're not really in a our movement is so disjointed and everybody's fighting each other. He said that's what they want. They implemented that. And the handlers even told me, all we have to do is send one person to infiltrate your movement and you all fall down like puppets without a string. Literally said that. He said, it's the easiest thing. He said, we're all weak. It's just, there's nothing to it, which I don't believe him. But
Yeah.
I do know that they do send people to infiltrate and, kind of push us apart and kind of be at each other's throats in a way. That's a Project Oblivion. That's what they want. But the kids are so important. He told me to come back here and tell people about the Olympia group and Project Oblivion. And he said to tell people, us, he said, whoever you're talking to who is part of your movement now, he's talking about me and you.
Yeah.
And he's saying, there is nobody else. He said, it's just us. We're the white hats. He said, we think we're waiting for this group to come and help us and take over and build the network. He said, there is no network. He said, we're it. And I was like, me? I was like, I'm just a girl. What can I do? What can I
Yeah.
say? I'm just a girl. And he's like, it's you guys. You guys are it. That's all we have. And he said, if we don't have you, we don't have anything, to do this and take this project on, pretty much, take this big, huge movement on. And he's saying you have to build the network, maintain the network, protect the Olympia group. So he's saying the message is protect children, these children and all children at all costs. There is no other way except to protect these children for the future, or we won't have one. And it was the most important message to me is when he came and said that protect children. It's been too much to where these children are being harmed. It's too much. And
Yeah.
now our whole world is going to be destroyed in the future. He said it's 12 to 15 years and we're on the verge of like he couldn't even say. But when I saw the base, have you ever seen something that just looks eternally murky, like an eternal dark cloud over it? That's the feeling I got. Like it was a bad situation from whatever happens. And he couldn't tell me what was going on. He just said, this is your mission. You go back and you tell people that what I said to build the network, maintain it, and protect the Olympia group. Those three things are the most important message that I've ever gotten, in my
Mhm.
opinion.
Well, that's incredible. And we all have to unite and podcasters stay out there podding and speaking the truth and with which I'm definitely going to do. I know Jamie will also. Jamie, any thoughts on that?
Definitely. I mean, I can tell you, with talking about MK Ultra, remote viewing, like all these different things, like people being, victimized through V2K. Um, Even because my experience was slightly different, but when I, release a video that gets however many views and there's thousands of comments of people, being terrorized in the same ways, it's like, and they're like, oh my goodness, I thought it was just me. Oh my goodness,
Mhm.
I thought I was just crazy. And I was like, wow, there is really like more to this than I know. There's so many different, avenues and facets of this, which Olivia explained, so many different like departments of this kind of thing. So definitely us keeping, and I can tell you for sure that like anytime I'm doing a show where I have someone come on and share their experience, and I'm very, wide open. Like my judge is my views or whatever are for Christianity and Jesus, right? But I have an open platform for anybody, right? Because I like to hear everybody's stories. I like to give a safe platform because I don't know everything, right?
Yeah.
Like, and we all like have to like help each other and support each other, not be against each other. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Which religion tends to do. So I'm really always open about hearing other people's experiences. And whenever I bring on somebody who shares an experience, like Olivia's, I'm telling you, there's so much weird stuff that happens in my house that night. Like the shadow people, things
I get
moving,
that
and I'll
too.
be like, you need to get out of my house.
Yeah.
I am not playing with you today.
Yeah.
Don't make me get my anointing oil.
No, that
You
happens all the time. That happened before this show. So yeah, I'm with the games, but just be mindful and be vigilant. And again, you just have to tell the truth. And
Right.
every time,
Glad to know Olivia is a nice remote viewer. Like, praise God, not
No, I know
everybody's
some
out to
nefarious ones.
sabotage me.
Oh, they're coming for everybody. And if they've so anybody that has been in a program, they have a so when you're done with the program and you're retired in their eyes, it doesn't mean you're off their radar. They have to continue to control and monitor you for the rest of your life. And when I was in the programs, they make you sign forms saying that you consent to be controlled and monitored for the rest of your life or by a threat of termination. And termination doesn't mean being fired. It means the end of you. You consented to that on paper. And those, to me, for what they told me, those forms hold up in all courts, any court. So they're going to be targeting anyone, you know, that was in a program, and they call it the aftercare program. I've gone to my own handler's house, remote viewed, saw what he was typing. These are remote handlers. These are guys in the chair sitting at a computer with their headset, making sure, and they all have like 33 or 34, clients that they have to monitor. And they decide what kind of punishment you're going to get and how to control you. Some people get the physical. I had the physical illnesses as targeting a lot of my life, to where it was I thought I was going to die a lot of the time. But they told me death is not the goal, it is just
Yeah.
complete control. And it's true. I never died. I always was on the felt like I was on the verge of death, even at a younger age where I almost had a stroke in my 30s, to that extreme, just to keep you from remembering, to keep you from talking, to keep you from waking other people up. They will go that far. So if you ever have something that's like a mystery illness, or if anybody feels like they have any mystery illness that no doctor can figure out, look into your life, and to
Yeah.
see if there's anything weird that you didn't realize. To me, it helps me to know that, oh, I'm not just normally sick. These people are trying to kill me because they knew what I was going to be. They probably knew what I would be able to do. And by telling people about this and, going out and, making books for people to know about what MK Ultra is, they probably knew that I was going to do that.
Yeah.
So they will do anything to pull you away from that. And they did that to me for a long time. And it took a lot for me to be able to pull myself out of that hole, hole of death, which felt like impending death all the time. I wasn't a normal person. That was part of my identity, where I just felt like I was rotting from the inside out. And they
Mhm.
will try that. They will try to, pretty much make your organs rot based on all the chemicals. They give us a lot of LSD and other chemicals throughout
Mm,
all the time we were assets.
yeah.
We might look young on the outside. A lot of us do look younger, but your insides are like your organs are pretty much rotting.
You sound like you're 19, just for the record, but say that.
It is true. You do look younger on the outside, but your insides are like 20 years older.
Mm,
You're pretty much
yeah.
rotting on the inside.
I've
So
had to use,
yeah.
oh, sorry. I've had to do a lot of, yeah, I found out at one point that I had a parasite infection, like
Mm.
random, and had to do all these, parasite cleanses and everything. And it was crazy. The only reason I found out is because I have a friend who was going to school to be a naturopath. And so she tested, because the doctors kept saying, "Oh, you're fine, you're fine." And I'm like, "No, there's something wrong with my stomach and my kidneys. Like there's something wrong." And she found out that I had like a parasite infection, and like God had told me, like, I'm gonna heal you. I'm gonna heal your kidneys and the worms that are inside of you. And I was like, oh my goodness, they put worms inside of me, thinking it was like, for me, because of my beliefs. I was like, it was a witchcraft attack. Like
Yeah.
they put worms on me, But
It
yeah,
could have been, it was most likely the government.
right.
Actually, I've had, okay, so somebody, and this was like 2 years ago, I had a really good friend. Um, when he met me, he ended up getting parasites, Morgellons, the extreme version of parasites, really badly. And he made the rounds of the doctors and all of that, and they all said it was just in his mind. And he had pictures of where, he could see them crawling behind his eyeball, like they're
Wow.
coming out of it, the fingertip, like crazy stuff, crazy. And he had pictures of it and everything. And, they all just said, you're crazy, you're crazy, So I did a remote viewing for it. And, I talked to his spirit guide, and it was really cool. And she told them, this is the government trying to suppress you. They know what kind of person you are. They know what happened to you. And her advice was to use your own inner strength, and God, and think, whatever your belief is,
Yeah.
use that. And she told him, burn it. She's like, and it was so dramatic. She was like, let it burn. She was saying it like that. And she was his guide. And she was telling him to use his own spiritual, experience and beliefs to burn the parasites away. And this spirit guide really believed that it was possible to burn them away with your own belief and your own belief in God or whatever you might believe in. I don't want to tell somebody what to believe in, but
Yeah.
for me, it was really intense to hear that, your own belief in God will burn this, burn it, burn. And she kept saying, let it burn, brother. It was so intense. And I like when I was letting this guide talk to me, I was just like, tears were just like pouring down my face. Like, and I was like in a trance just with something. The emotion of her though was like so amazing. I wish more people could experience, actually meeting their guides and the way she said she couldn't intervene physically, but her advice was let it burn. Let it burn away from you. You have the ability within yourself to burn it all away.
And did it work for him?
Yes,
Um,
he's cured. He's cured of it.
I
Yeah.
do
You
believe
you
that.
you have to believe in yourself, and
Mhm.
I feel like I did that to myself too, like in a way, opening up to all these different things from where I was on my deathbed for, I don't know, 15 years or something, to
Wow.
now it's a complete turnaround.
Yeah.
And I've been given the ability to, maintain, get back some of my health in order to do this. I
Hmm.
feel like God knew that I needed to do this, and he gave me a little bit of that back so I could pursue this and make this
Yeah.
happen. If I was sick the way I was, I would never be doing this. There would be not even be a possibility to do this. So I feel like, God kind of pushed, and my father kind of pushed me into this because he always supports me whenever I do any remote viewing or astral travel or anything like that. I see my father, and he's in the spirit world. So I feel very close to him now that he's there. And we actually have a better relationship now than when he was alive. Like I can, just like he spoke up right before the podcast started, like to give his blessing. Like, this is what I wanted to, this is what I told her to do. Like he told me to do this. He said to go out there and tell everybody what they did and what they made us do. That was one of the first sessions I did where I saw him and he told me that. That was his message. And I'll never forget it. And the feeling that I had from, we were estranged our whole lives, and to have him, feel that way towards me now that he's dead, I really felt
Yeah.
like it was this amazing spiritual, like angelic thing that happened between us. Like he said this, and he's watching this movement, and he said they're all watching it up there, and he said they see what we're doing, and he told me that he said for me to know that this is a hard road. He said, you chose a hard road. And he said, but go anyways. He's like, this is what the world's been waiting for, is this huge change, a huge energetic change that not just for us, but the universe, they're all waiting up in the celestial realms to see this. They're all watching us. And he kind of gave me this image of like people like cheering and clapping, like, go, 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 huge energetic push for us to make a huge transformation and change in this world.
Wow. That's amazing. And I believe we are. And
I believe it too. I think
yeah.
even just today, I feel like this is a huge push, even with the stuff, I started talking about at the beginning, and then, how it all intersects and interweaves, and it's so interesting to see how that can come together with, this now, and the messages I get from like, Source and Jesus, being able to let Jesus use my body to speak and Source use my body to speak. And actually when he was Source, he called himself No Name
Mhm.
instead, which I thought was interesting. He called himself, and everybody else called him No Name. Instead of God, they said No Name. And it was the most interesting thing that I've ever heard him called,
Yeah.
or it called. I don't know how people think of it, but now that I know it's No Name, it's really interesting.
Hmm. Definitely. All right. Well, in closing, Olivia, give all your socials or places that or in groups that you're in that people can find.
Yes. And
Yeah.
I also want to make sure people know that if anybody is experiencing any memories of MK Ultra, mind control, satanic ritual abuse, targeting, um, feel like you're being handled in some way, there's support groups.
You cut out there, Olivia.
My mentor, Misha Johnston. There's support groups if you want to
Repeat that
contact.
one more time, only because you cut out. You were gone.
Ready? Can you hear me?
Hmm.
Oh, I was going to say that if anybody has been having issues or with MK Ultra or mind control, you can contact Misha Johnson. She does weekly support groups for this. I'm actually in the support groups, and it's been a huge help. It's helped me. She's helped me change my life around, from where I was to, being able to express this information. If we all work together, if somebody's having a hard time talking about this, and trust me, I understand because I know how it sounds to normal people when we try to talk about this. You need a safe space to be able to share information. So reach out to Misha Johnson. She has her own website. She's on Facebook. She's on Instagram, TikTok, all those. I have all my information on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter X. I have books published, but not everybody's a reader, so I try to offer it in different forms of media. I make small videos of my information. They're all free. They're on TikTok. So if nobody's a reader, you go there and you can get the same information that I have in my books if you want to do it that way. But also, if somebody's a reader, the books are there to be immersed in, that kind of thing. So I'm all over the place. You can't miss it.
Perfect, perfect. And Jamie, go ahead and give your information because I know you have a lot going on this week or in the upcoming weeks.
Yeah, so Jamie Tarl on all platforms. My YouTube channel is more exclusively dedicated to gang stalking, MK Ultra, and of course addiction, and Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and I am actually throwing a recovery community unity event called Stronger Together, June 28th. It's going to be in Athens, Georgia, and it's a free event. And we're going to have musicians and speakers sharing testimonies of hope and overcoming. So you can find that information as well.
Perfect, perfect. Again, we still didn't go on certain avenues that eventually I want to go on, but not on this particular episode. But because Olivia, we never got into the Mars thing. At some point,
Oh, it's so interesting. You got
about
to hear
Mars.
it.
Yes,
Yeah, you got to hear it. This is so
yes.
interesting. And
So,
more people are coming out talking about it every day. More and more
exactly.
people.
Exactly. So yeah, definitely want to have you back on. For that, we can have the main show. Again, I wanted to separate this to allow all conversations to be accessible, meaning say what you want with, you can have little people who are prude and whatever on the main show or the bonus episode. I want to separate these particular episodes for guests that come on and are open and free to say whatever they want without any, issues or anything. So, but again, I want to thank you, Olivia James, for coming on.
Thank you.
And, again, go grab her book. You can catch it on Amazon. Again, did you have a website? You do have a website because
I'm doing so I started doing new articles on Substack and Medium. So now I have two blogs too. I'm trying to get, and I'm doing new articles every week. If I get new information, I'm actually writing a third book too with all new
Nice.
information. So working on that too. Trying to get as much as I can to people,
Yep. And when you finish that, can't wait to have you back on for that. But hopefully I'll have you on before that because again,
Yes.
there's so much even on the first book.
Yes.
We barely, cut into that. Again, I was going down a whole thing with Diddy only because of the ritual practices that go on. And I guess people are doing this from Olivia's standpoint. I guess they're doing it, majority of people, just because they really want to freak off, meaning they're just sexually, whatever. It's not to conjure or to do certain things. So maybe that's, just people's personal preferences, and then they turn it into whatever they turn it into, and which most of the times aren't good because you can't,
Yeah.
doing things against other people's
I've
will.
worked in a lot of different areas with, different populations, and
Mhm.
there are just some people that are monsters.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of them. And it's an epidemic.
And I always say that I'm more afraid of humans than ghosts or anything.
I am too. There's just some people that I've seen it with my own eyes, literally just in my present life. There are people that are monsters.
Yes. Yes. And on that note, we are out.
Thank you.
As the final candle flickers and the darkness presses in, Our passage through the hidden chambers of sex, power, and the occult draws to a close, at least for this night. You have been listening to Strange Darkness Radio, After Dark, where we dare to peer beneath the surface of desire, ritual, and ambition, unearthing truths that most would rather leave buried. Our deepest gratitude to Olivia James for her bravery, honesty, and the chilling revelations she shared about secret rituals and spiritual shadows. Olivia, thank you for leading us through the veiled corridors of your own journey and the mysteries woven into your GreyMouse series. A heartfelt thank you as well to our guest co-host, Jamie Tall, whose curiosity and empathy helped illuminate even the darkest corners of tonight's conversation. If tonight's revelations have unsettled or awakened something within you, know this: you are not alone in the shadows. We invite you to share your stories, your questions, and your encounters with the strange and the unseen. Together, we cast light into places others fear to tread. Until we gather again, I am Benson, your spectral guide, wishing you safe travels through the night. Remain vigilant, remain curious, and always remember, beware what stirs in the darkness. Strange Darkness Radio. After dark, we go where others will not.